Okay. So let us start today's lecture. So in the last lecture, I introduced to you this particular functional. You have already, you are now familiar with this functional z of j is the generating functional in the presence of an external source. And in the last lecture, we have introduced this w of j is another generating functional, and let us see what it does for the time being. And from here you can see that if you take a log of this, then you get, okay. So wj is related to z of j by this relation, and now let us just functionally differentiate w of j with respect to j. So if I do that, so just differentiate this, say j at time t1, and if you do that, then uh, this will give us minus I h bar. This is a del del j t1 of z of j. So that will give us a, these are like ordinary rules of differentiation. So we'll have z of j and then del zj del j t1. So that is what we shall have. And if I just set this to j is equal to 0 after doing the differentiation functionally, then we can see, we know that this expression is nothing but q hat of t1, right? By definition. And therefore, you can see that q hat t1 by definition is this, but q hat t1 is also equal to delta wj delta j t1. So you have another expression for q hat t1 in terms of the generating function of w of j. Let us now differentiate once more and see what happens. So if you do this differentiation once more, then as I mentioned, we will get two terms from here. So the two terms are, I will get minus 1 by zj square and then del zj del of j p2 and we also have del zj zj1. Okay, so this is the first term that we get, and then we will have plus this okay. So this is just you apply the chain rule for differentiation and you will end up with this expression. Just multiply with a IH bar both sides. So then you will get a minus IH bar whole square. And now take j is equal to 0. Now set j is equal to 0. And see what you get. So you can see that this expression, the first expression, let us concentrate on this expression. So that is basically, if I just take out a minus, then with each, this one you can attach a 1 by zj and a minus I h bar, and similarly with this factor also. And therefore, both of them evaluated at j is equal to 0 will give q hat t2 expectation by definition and q hat t1 expectation. The first term by definition. And what about the second term? The second term is nothing but, this is the time ordered by definition. So we have this. Okay. And now we can combine these two expressions and write this as time ordered product of q hat t1 minus this, you can see, I think it is visible. Yes, you can see. So, okay, so this thing, and then there will be, this bracket will be closed. This is the expectation. So you can easily check that if you multiply these factors, so you will get q hat t1, q hat t2. This is already a number because you have taken the expectation value. So this is a number. So you will get, the next term will be q hat t1 expectation q hat t2, and there will be this again, this with this, and there will be this with this. So this will come with a plus, this and this will come with a plus, but these two things will come with a minus. So you will get a minus 2 of that thing. So that minus and this plus will cancel, and you will get this term back. And you obviously have this term from the first term here. So what you can see is that this object minus I h bar del 2 wj differentiate twice and evaluating it at j is equal to 0 gives basically the time ordered product of these operators, but it is not only these operators, but it is the deviation of the operator, time ordered product of the deviation of the operator from their means. So Z was giving the time ordered product of these two operators, but W, if you differentiate twice, it gives you the time ordered product of these operators, of the deviation of these operators from their mean. So these two objects are different. You can understand the difference between these two objects now. And we shall do one more, we shall compute one more, we shall carry out one more differentiation, functional differentiation, and compute the 3-point function and see what we get. It is a little bit cumbersome, but let us do this exercise. It will be helpful for us, and see what you get from here. So we have already carried out 2 differentiations. Let us differentiate once more. So if you differentiate once more, you will get many terms. We have to be careful with all these terms.
Sir,
Yes.
the first term is minus expectation Q cap T2 into expectation Q cap T1. Uh, so shouldn't there be a plus sign in the total expectation value in the last line? In one of the terms, I mean.
Just check it. You multiply this out and check it. This is a trivial thing. You just multiply it out. See this term, this multiplied by this will give you this, right?
Yes, sir, that is fine. Yeah.
That is fine. Now this multiplied by this will give you what?
Minus Q cap T1 expectation into Q cap T2 and then the
No, no,
expectation.
no. No. This term multiplied by this term will give you minus expectation of this times minus expectation of this.
Ye- Yes,
Because this is a number, you can take it outside and you have an expectation, so this will become expectation. So
yes,
you,
sir.
and this multiplied by this will give you what? The same thing with the
But
minus sign.
they are both the same terms. They will not cancel until I have a plus sign.
Hang on, just wait a bit. So
Mm.
do you agree this will give a minus and this will also give you a minus? So they will add up.
Okay, sir, I got. I was making a mistake. Yes,
This is a trivial thing. And then
yes.
the last term will cancel one of the terms.
Okay, sir, I got. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Now let us differentiate this 3 times functionally. You already have this result, and what you do is you multiply this by another minus IH bar. So now you have minus IH bar square, and therefore this is equal to minus IH bar cube, because this was a square and you multiply it by minus IH bar, so this gives a minus IH bar cube. And now you keep on differentiating. So let us start from this term. Let us start from this one. So what we shall get is 1 by Zj del cube Zj. Okay. So from this term you will have another term that is minus 1 by Zj square del 2. We have del Zj del j at P3 times this factor. Okay. So this term is complete. We have differentiated all the terms. Now look at this term. So from this one we shall have plus 2 by Zj cube, and then we have del Zj Jt3 Jt1, and then we shall have two more terms from here. So that will give us minus 1 by Zj square delta 2 Zj del j T3 j T2 times del z J. This is one of the terms, and then there is only one more term left, that is 1 by Zj square delta Zj by J at T3 and J at T1. Okay, and this therefore gives us this thing. So you can see how many terms you have got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 terms, and now you take, after doing this, set j is equal to 0. So at the end of the calculation, set j is equal to 0. So from this term, you can immediately see that this is minus I h bar whole cube, and then you have 3 differentiations from here, this term. So this term by definition is nothing but time ordered product of q hat of q hat T1, q hat T2, q hat T3. Okay, this is the first term. By definition, is this time ordered product of this expectation value of that. Now you look at the second term, this one. So here you can partition this I h bar square, I h bar cube. You can take I h bar square and attach it with this with a 1 by zj, and the remaining minus I h bar you can clump it with this term with another 1 by zj. So, and you have a minus outside. So let us write it down. So you have a minus. So 1 by zj del j T3 with a minus I h bar is by definition nothing but q hat, since this is at time T3, so this is T3. Okay, expectation of q hat at time T3. And the remaining term, this one is by definition time ordered product of q hat T2, q hat T1. This is this term. What about this term? The third term is plus 2. You can partition with each term. You have a 1 by zj, and you have a minus I h bar whole cube outside. So this you can write it down as plus 2 q hat. This one is T3. It doesn't matter in which order you write, because these are all expectation values. Therefore, these are numbers. Then, but still, I am writing in the particular order that I have written. So this gives you a q hat T2 expectation, and this, the last one, gives us q hat T1 expectation. So this is also done. This term. Last two terms. The last line. So here we will get a minus because of this minus sign. Then we will have expectation of T. This term you had, this is a T3, therefore this will be T3. You had T2 expectation, and then you have this one, so that will give us Q hat T1. So this term is also taken care of, and you also have the last term now. So this is a minus. This term will be Q hat T2 expectation, and then you have this one. So this will be time ordered product of Q hat at T3, Q hat at T1. So everything is complete. So this expression that you have evaluated at j is equal to 0 is basically equal to this. And now you can see that there are three kinds of terms. The first term is obviously the time ordered product, which comes from differentiating functionally the generating function of zj 3 times. So this is this one. Then you have a term which is like this, which is the expectation value of each of the operators separately. This is another class of term. And then this is another class of term where it is a sort of partitioning. Out of the three operators, one operator you have a single expectation value, and two operators you have a time ordered product expectation value. So this term, and this term, this one, and this term. These are another class of terms. So you can see that if you continue this process, all the terms can be divided or can be put into boxes which looks very similar to each other. So it gives a nice pattern in the calculation, and this pattern can be exploited later to draw something known as Feynman diagrams, and you can write all these things in a pictorial way, which is called Feynman diagrams in the language of Feynman diagrams. You can write all these expressions in the Feynman diagram language, because all these things have a corresponding diagram with each other, and therefore you can write it in terms of that. But let us not do it for the time being. Let us not worry about Feynman diagrams at this moment. But you can see that these terms have a particular structure, and now you can combine all these things in a very nice, in a neat form as before. You can write this as time ordered product of Q hat T1 minus the expectation of Q hat T1. So this is one term multiplied by Q hat T2 minus the expectation of Q hat T2 multiplied by Q hat T3 minus the expectation of Q hat T3. So you can see that just as in the 2-point case, 2-point function, here also the 3-point function in terms of this new functional wj, you compute the 3-point function of this from this functional, then the result is basically the expectation value of the time ordered product of the deviations of the product of the deviations of the individual operators from their means. So the same result as the one that we obtained in the case of the 2-point function, here also we get the same result. You just keep on multiplying the deviations of the operators from their means, and then take their time ordered product, because there are more than one time. So you have to take time ordered product, since these are operators. Operators at different times, they do not commute. Therefore, you take the time ordered product of those things, and then you take the expectation value, and that thing is basically nothing but this one. So from Zj, you only obtain the time ordered product of the operators. From Wj, you are obtaining the time ordered product of the deviations of the operators from their mean values, from their expectation values. So you see that these two things are basically physically different objects. Zj generates some kind of an object, but Wj generates different kind of objects. But for the harmonic oscillator case, we have computed the 2-point function explicitly from the generating functional. It is basically the Feynman-Green's function of the theory for the free quantum harmonic oscillator. And we also noted that the expectation value of Q hat at time t is basically 0 for the harmonic oscillator. So if you note that, feature, then from here you will see that Remember the 2-point case, delta 2 Wj del j T2 del j T1, that was basically time ordered product of deviation, but this thing is 0, right? So this thing was 0 for harmonic oscillator case. For the free harmonic oscillator case, this thing was 0. So Wj and Zj basically gives the same Green's function. They give the same Green's function of the theory. It is equal to Gf, Feynman Green's function. Because these expectation values of this individual operator, the 1-point function is 0. But there can be cases where the 1-point function is not 0. And then Wj, the things that Wj generate and Zj generate are different from each other. So this is one thing that I wanted to demonstrate to you. And I also wanted to introduce the two different functionals. So Zj, we have already seen how to work with Zj and what is its importance. And now you can see another functional which is called the Schwinger functional, which is Wj, and we have seen how it works. So with this, now I shall come, as I mentioned in the previous lecture, that I want to calculate the Feynman Green's function explicitly. So I mentioned a couple of lectures back that I wrote down an expression for the Feynman Green's function, but I mentioned that I will compute the integral explicitly in some other class, in some other lecture. So this I shall do it now. So remember that Gf t minus t prime, this is the thing that this was basically, this is the Feynman Green's function. And the Green's function is defined by this equation, okay? Where epsilon is a very small positive number. Epsilon approaches 0 from the positive side. It is a small positive number. Epsilon is greater than 0. And this function Gf of t minus t prime is the Feynman Green's function. And we made a Fourier transform. I don't remember, I did not use a 1 by 2 pi. Anyway, we'll have a 1 by 2 pi outside. Whether you use it or not, ultimately the final result will have a 1 by 2 pi in front. And this was dk e to the power of minus I k e minus e prime divided by e squared plus I epsilon. Okay, so this is the expression for the Feynman Green's function, and we see that this is an integral over this k from minus infinity to plus infinity, and this is our integrand. Let us look at this term, at this term, okay? So you see that this is a difficult integral because you have a complex number here, which basically means, so you should also remember that our aim is to take the limit epsilon going to 0, right? And at the end of the calculation. And this means the denominator tells us that this integrand has simple poles in the complex K plane. Right? We have done complex analysis. Therefore, this has simple poles in the complex K plane. So let me write this denominator 1 by k square minus omega square plus I epsilon the following way. You can write this down as 1 by k square minus omega square minus I epsilon. And now you can write this down as approximately. Let me just check whether I have written. If I square it, I will get omega square, and then I will get twice 2 omega will cancel minus I epsilon. Okay, so this expression, this thing is approximately equal to this up to a term. If you square this, you will get a term of epsilon square, of order epsilon square. But we are neglecting that term of order epsilon square because epsilon is very, very small. So this expression is approximately equal to this. There is no doubt about that. And now, this I shall write this as, I shall call this epsilon by 2 omega as, this is k square minus omega minus I delta. Where what is delta? Let me write down delta here. So delta is epsilon by 2 omega. And since epsilon is greater than 0, therefore, this is also greater than 0. Okay? Because we are taking omega to be positive. This omega is greater than 0. So this delta is greater than 0. You can write it in this way. You could have directly written it down. So now I have this thing. So this is now a square minus b square formula. And therefore, this you can immediately write it down as 1 divided by. So a square minus b square is a minus b minus omega plus this times k, a plus b, so k plus omega minus I delta. So this expression, the integrand 1 divided by this factor k square minus omega square plus I epsilon is nothing but 1 divided by this thing. So as I mentioned a few minutes back, that this integrand has, you can see, it has simple poles in the complex k plane, right? So the complex k plane is this. This is real k, along which the integral has to be performed from minus infinity to plus infinity, and this is imaginary k, and this is the complex k plane. Okay, and you can see that the integrand has poles at, so when this factor is 0, when k is equal to omega minus I delta, omega minus I delta means this point. So this point is omega minus I delta. So this value is delta. This length is delta. And this factor is 0 when k is equal to minus omega plus I delta. This is this point. Minus omega plus I delta. And this is delta. Okay? So there are two poles here. Simple poles in the complex k plane. So there is no problem. You can just integrate. But you have to take, you have to consider the contribution. So let us, the standard technique in complex variable analysis to perform this integral is to consider this k as a complex number, right? And go to the complex plane and then perform the integral. So the technique is the following. We want to perform this integral dk, where k is now a complex number, and which is t minus t prime divided by k square minus omega square plus I epsilon. So this k is a complex number now, and we want to compute this contour integral, right? This is the standard technique in complex variable analysis. We want to compute this contour integral. And notice that now we will separate two cases out. We shall first consider the case where t minus t prime is greater than 0. The question that arises here is, in computing this contour integral, is the following. This is a contour integral, but the question is, where do you close the contour? Do you close the contour in the lower half plane or in the upper half plane? So that is the question that you have to keep in mind. So to decide that where to close the contour, first let us consider the case that t minus t prime is greater than 0. So if t minus t prime is greater than 0, then you can see that you need to close, this thing is positive, you need to close the contour in the lower half plane. Is it okay? Because in the lower half plane, k is basically minus, there will be a k is complex, and in the lower half plane, from k you will have a term which is minus I times some positive number, because you are closing in the lower half plane. And minus I, and this minus I is minus. So the overall thing will be e to the power of minus some positive number. So for this case, t minus t prime greater than 0, what I mean to say is that if this radius is minus r, suppose this is minus r, and this radius is plus r, and you close it like this. So this is a semicircle. It's not a nice figure, but just assume that this is a semicircle of radius r. So this radius is r, and you are moving along the contour, right? You are on this line, on this arc. So for that, when this is greater than 0, in the philosophy of contour integral is that this contribution, when you close it, it's a closed contour integral, this contribution should go to 0. And this contribution, the contribution from this arc can go to 0 only if you close the contour in the lower half plane. Had you closed it in the upper half plane, then the contribution from the arc would not be 0. Right? So this contribution from the arc will be 0 only if you close the contour in the lower half plane for this particular case. And I have given you the argument for that. So this thing, this contour integral, is basically nothing but, I am just writing it pictorially. This is basically coming from minus r to plus r. This is one thing, minus r to plus r. And then you have the integrand here. The integrand is this. Plus integral, you are coming from here. This is the direction of integration. And then you come from here to here. So I will just, so this is just an arc, and this is like this. This is an arc of radius, this is a circular arc of radius r. And you have to take the limit at the end of the calculation here. You have to take the limit r tending to infinity. R tending to infinity, integral minus r to plus r gives the principal value of the integral, which is nothing but this integral. So if that limit exists, in the limit r tending to infinity, we call it to be the Cauchy principal value. It may exist, it may not exist. If it exists, we call it the Cauchy principal value of this integral. And this is nothing but this integral that we want to compute. And this integral, since we have closed the arc in the lower half plane for t minus t prime greater than 0, therefore this contribution in the limit r going to infinity will vanish. And therefore, this integral, this particular integral that we want to compute is basically nothing but equal to this contour, is equal to computing this contour integral. Right? Therefore, this integral that you have now is equal to this contour integral, but this contour integral, we know that this is, since this has been closed in the, like this, in the clockwise direction, so this goes like this for t minus t prime greater than 0. Therefore, this will give us, due to this orientation, of this clockwise orientation, we will get a minus 2 pi I sum over residues. So this is by the Cauchy residue theorem that we all know. And sum over residue. And what are the residues? The residues is the value of this integrand at these single poles. Now you can see one thing, that when you close the contour in the lower half plane, this pole does not come into the picture. You get the residue contribution comes from only this pole. So there is only one thing here. So this is limit k tending to omega minus I delta from this pole, and this becomes k minus omega plus I delta times the integrand is e to the power of minus I k t minus t prime divided by we have this thing we have already written down in a factored form. So this gives us k minus omega plus I delta k plus omega minus I delta, right? And now you can see that this factor cancels away, and you just need to put k is equal to omega minus I delta in this term. So if you do that, then this contour integral, which is basically equal to the Cauchy principal value of that integral, is a Cauchy principal value, which is nothing but this integral, minus infinity to plus infinity dk e to the power of minus I k t minus t prime divided by k square minus omega square plus I epsilon. This thing is basically equal to minus 2 pi I. You also remember that you have a 1 by 2 pi outside. So this 1 by 2 pi and this 1 by 2 pi will cancel and give us a minus I. So we have a minus I, and then let us plug in the limits. This limit. So this will give us minus I k I omega minus I delta t minus t prime divided by, you have that term, so we have omega minus I delta plus omega minus I delta. And at the end of the calculation, we want to take delta going to 0 limit, right? Because epsilon goes to 0, and therefore delta also goes to 0. And therefore, what we have is the following. So we have minus I by 2 omega e to the power of minus I omega t minus t prime. So this is the result of this integral for t minus t prime greater than 0. And you can write this I downstairs. It will become 2I omega. So e to the power of minus I omega t minus t prime divided by 2I omega. So this contribution, we shall call it to be Green's function plus t minus t prime. Plus because I just label it by plus. because to just remind yourself that t minus t prime is greater than 0. Okay. Is this okay? Is this calculation okay? I'll just pause for 1 minute. Okay, very good.
Yes.
Okay. So GF plus t minus t prime is equal to this result that we have computed. Now there is a second case, which is t minus t prime less than 0. You have to compute. You have to consider this case also, and the argument is once again goes as in the previous case. In this case for t minus t prime, so this is the case for t minus t prime greater than 0. You close it in the lower half plane. For t minus t prime less than 0, you close it in the upper half plane. And if you close it in the upper half plane, this pole will not contribute. You will get the residue contribution from this simple pole. You have to take this contribution. And then, if you do the same calculation, please complete it yourself. For t minus t prime less than 0, I shall call this g minus t minus t prime. This will be equal to, please do this calculation and convince yourself that you get this result. This will be e to the power of I omega t minus t prime by 2I omega. Okay? Please check this, that in this case you have to close the contour in the upper half plane, and if you do the calculation, you will get this result. And now,
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, in the case of t minus t prime less than 0, sir, when we perform the same process that we have performed here,
Yes.
in that case, when we take limit r tending to infinity, then the contribution from the lower half will be equal to 0, right?
For t minus t prime less than 0.
Yes, sir.
In the lower half plane, you will not close the contour. That is what I mentioned now. You will not
Yeah,
close.
that's what I'm asking.
Yes. What are you asking?
Then we take limit r tending to infinity. Then
Yes.
then we then we separate the closed integral in two forms into two parts.
I could not follow your question. Repeat your question once more.
Sir, if you follow the same process as you have done on the board,
Right.
then we take a limit r tending to infinity. Then we separate the closed contour integral into two integrals.
Yes, closed contour integral we have separated into two integrals. Good.
Yeah, I am asking that in the case of t minus t prime less than 0, the integral on the lower half will be equal to 0, right?
No. In the case that if you have followed this argument, then you will see that when t minus t prime is less than 0, you are computing this closed contour integral. You are not supposed to close the contour integral in the lower half plane, because if you close the contour integral in the lower half plane, the contribution will diverge, will blow up in the r tending to infinite limit. Therefore you cannot close the contour in the lower half plane. You have to close the contour in the upper half plane for t minus t prime less than 0. And for t minus t prime greater than 0, see, we have closed the contour in the lower half plane. We have not closed it in the upper half plane. Why? Because had you closed this contour in the upper half plane for t minus t prime greater than 0, then that contribution would diverge in the limit r tending to infinity. So you have to be clever enough to find where you have to close the contour. What is the contour that you have to take? What is the path? A contour is basically a path, right? What is you have to choose your own path in a clever way, so that you can ultimately get your desired result. We are after, our main aim is to compute this integral. This is our main aim. Our main aim is not to compute the contour integral. We don't want, that is not our aim. Our aim is basically to compute this simple integral along the real line. But in computing this integral, we see that we are facing problems. What is the problem? The problem is that this integral has poles in the complex k plane. If you remove this epsilon going to 0, if you remove this factor epsilon going to 0, then you see that this integral has poles in the real plane along the direction in which you are integrating. So that is the problem. And that is why Feynman put a factor of I epsilon, so you can lift the poles. Suppose this factor is not there, then your poles are basically on the real line. These are your poles. And this is the direction along which you are integrating. So that is the problem. So what you do is, you just lift one of the pole like this and one of the pole like this. And then this integral along the real line the poles are not along the real line, so you are happy. But still, how to compute this integral? So what we do is we take help of complex analysis, complex variable theory. And in doing that, we know the results of complex variable analysis is a very powerful mathematical branch of mathematical analysis. You can take the help of complex analysis, and then you can try to obtain your integral by computing a contour integral. The contour integral, this for t minus t prime greater than 0, is basically equal to this along the real line plus something. Now where to close it, upper or lower? If I close it on upper side, that contribution will diverge. So you will never get this into the, you are after this integral, this one. You will never get the value of this integral. So you want to separate this contour integral into two parts. One part is the integral which you want to compute, and the other part, this will be equal to the contour integral only if the other contribution goes to 0. And the other contribution can go to 0 only if you close the contour in the lower half plane for this case. When this is less than 0, the other contribution can go to 0 if only if you close the contour on the upper half plane. Okay, I hope this is clear now. So we shall continue from here in the next class. So if you have any questions at this moment, you can please ask. So there is a very important quote by a very famous mathematician, Hadamard. He says that the distance between two truths in the real domain passes through the complex plane. So you want to find this. This is an integral along the real line, and you want to find this, but then you can compute it. When you consider this k as a complex variable, and you apply the techniques of complex variable analysis, Cauchy residue theorem, and at once you get the result of that integral. So as I mentioned, please try to do this one, this case, and convince yourself that this is indeed this thing. Do you have any more questions at this moment? Okay. Okay, so if you don't have any more questions, let us close the meeting for today. Thank you very much.